The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating seats, each more scared than they wanted to show. The air felt heavy with fear and desperation. Ambassador Zethka adjusted his ceremonial robes with 4 nervous hands. His large eyes kept moving between the data screens showing the terrible news. The Devourers had struck again. 3 more star systems had gone dark in the past week. Billions of lives simply gone. The mechanical enemy had appeared from the void 6 months ago. No one knew where they came from. They moved like a single giant creature made of metal and death. Every ship looked the same, dark, angular, covered in weapons. They never spoke. They never negotiated. They just consumed everything in their path. The Altarian delegate stood first. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. The Altarian Republic pledges 200 dreadnoughts to the defense fleet, he announced. His voice echoed through the chamber's translation systems. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. 200 dreadnoughts was a massive commitment. Each ship could level a small moon. The Crystalline Collective's representative rose next. Her body looked like living diamond, catching and reflecting the chamber's lights. We offer our entire merchant fleet. 500 vessels, all equipped with our best shield technology. More nods of approval. The crystalline shields were legendary. Nothing could break them easily. One by one, each species made their promises. The Corvan Empire offered their famous battle cruisers. The Luminari, despite being peaceful by nature, pledged their ceremonial guard ships. Even the small trade worlds promised what few vessels they had. The numbers grew on the main display. 2,000 ships. 3,000. 4,000. The largest fleet in galactic history was taking shape. Then the human delegation's turn came. Admiral Sarah Chun stood slowly. She was smaller than most beings in the chamber, wearing a simple dark uniform with few decorations. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight knot. Her face showed no emotion at all. The chamber felt quiet. Everyone knew about humans. They had joined the galactic community only 50 years ago, but they had already gained a strained reputation. Some called them brilliant. Others called them dangerous. All agreed they were unpredictable. The Terran Federation will contribute to this defense, Admiral Chun said in a calm voice. Zeth-Ka leaned forward. The humans controlled a decent-sized territory with several strong worlds. They had good technology and experienced crews. Their contribution could make a real difference. How many ships will Earth send? Asked the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had helped form the galactic government centuries ago. Admiral Chun looked directly at the speaker. Her dark eyes never blinked. The Terran Federation will send 1 ship. The silence that followed was complete. Even the chamber's background humming seemed to stop. Zeth felt his 4 hearts skip beats. 1 ship? Had the translation systems failed? The humans were known for being strange, but this was beyond strange. This was insulting. Surely there has been an error, Zethka said, his voice higher than usual. Did you mean 100 ships? 1,000? No error, Admiral Chun replied. 1 ship. The TFS Prometheus. The chamber exploded into noise. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some species made angry, clicking sounds. Others flashed colors that meant deep insult in their cultures. The Corvan general slammed his massive fist on his seat's arm. This is mockery. The Devourers have destroyed entire fleets, and you offer 1 ship? The Altarian delegate's blue skin had turned red with anger. My people are dying, human. This is not the time for jokes. Even the peaceful Luminari representative glowed with upset colors. We expected better from Earth. Your people have always claimed to value life. Admiral Chun waited for the noise to die down. She did not look angry or embarrassed. She simply stood there, patient as stone, until the chamber became quiet again. "The Terran Federation has made its decision," she said. "One ship will be sent." The speaker tried to maintain order. "Admiral Chun, perhaps you could explain this choice. The threat we face requires maximum effort from all worlds." For the first time, something flickered in the human's eyes. Not fear or doubt, but something else. Something that made Zethka's skin crawl, even though he could not name it. "The Prometheus will be sufficient," Admiral Chun said. "Sufficient?" The Corvan general stood to his full 8-foot height. "You dare suggest one human ship equals our combined might?" Admiral Chun gathered her papers and datapads. "I suggest nothing, General. I simply state fact." She turned to leave, but the speaker called out, "Admiral, your people have a reputation for unconventional tactics. Is there something about this ship that makes it special?" Admiral Chun paused at the chamber's exit. She looked back at the assembled delegates. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy, all staring at her with confusion, anger, and growing fear. "There is something you all should understand about human military doctrine," she said quietly. But in the chamber's perfect acoustics, everyone heard every word. When other species go to war, they send fleets because they plan for some ships to be lost. When humans go to war, we send one ship because we plan for it to win. The Admiral left without another word. The chamber doors sealed behind her with a soft hiss. For long moments, no one spoke. Then conversations began again, but they were different now. Quieter, more worried. Zeth-Ka had lived for 300 years. He had seen wars and disasters across the galaxy. He had watched civilizations rise and fall. But something in the human admiral's voice had shaken him in a way he could not explain. The old ones, those who had been watching galactic politics the longest, remembered stories about humans. Stories that most people thought were exaggerated. Tales of impossible victories against overwhelming odds. Battles where single human ships had done things that should have been impossible. The Battle of Proxima, where one human ship had held off an entire blockade fleet for 6 days. The Siege of New Geneva, where a single human vessel had somehow broken the famous Syndicate battle formation. The raid on the Corvan shipyards, where humans had crippled an entire fleet while it was still in port. Each time, the humans had used only 1 or 2 ships. Each time, everyone had said it was luck or exaggeration. But the results were documented. The enemies were real. The victories had actually happened. Now, facing the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen, the humans were once again sending one ship dot as the council session ended and delegates began making their own preparations. A strange thought began to spread through the chamber. Maybe the humans were not being insulting or stupid. Maybe they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. Maybe the sight of one human ship arriving at a battle was not a sign of Earth's weakness. Maybe it was a promise of something much worse for their enemies. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the TFS Prometheus and watched his crew work. The ship was quiet, except for the soft hum of systems and the gentle beeping of computers. Outside the large windows, stars moved slowly past as they traveled through space. The Prometheus did not look like the massive warships other species built. It was sleek and dark, about the size of a heavy cruiser. No extra decorations covered its hull. No bright lights announced its presence. It looked almost boring compared to the golden ships of the Altarians or the crystal vessels of the Collective. But Webb knew that looks meant nothing. What mattered was what the ship could do. Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka approached his captain's chair. She was his second in command, a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been with Webb for 5 years, through 3 major battles and dozens of smaller fights. "Captain," she said quietly, The crew's asking questions. Webb did not turn from the stars. What kind of questions? About our support fleet. When will the other Earth ships arrive? How many are coming? Tanaka paused. They know we are going to fight the Devourers alone. Webb finally looked at his officer. He could see worry in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. The crew trusted him, but they were not stupid. They knew what they were flying toward. Tell them what I tell every crew before a mission like this, Webb said. We do not need a fleet. We are the fleet. He pressed a button on his chair, and the main display screen lit up. It showed a star map with their destination marked in red. Around that system, thousands of red dots showed the position of Devourer ships. Look at that, Webb said. Every species in the galaxy thinks the same way when they see those numbers. More enemies means they need more ships. Bigger threats mean bigger fleets. It seemed logical. Tanaka studied the display. The Devourer force was massive. Each red dot represented a ship the size of a city, armed with weapons that could crack planets. But humans learned something different, Webb continued. We learned it during our own wars, before we reached the stars. He changed the display to show historical battles from Earth, ancient fights with sailing ships, old wars with metal planes, and the space battles that had taught humanity hard lessons about survival. When humans first fought each other in space, we made the same mistakes, Webb said. We built big fleets and sent them to die against other big fleets. Thousands of ships destroyed. Millions of people killed. Whole colonies lost. The bridge crew had stopped their work to listen. This was not the first time their captain had told this story, but it never got old. Then something changed, Webb said. We started asking different questions. Not how many ships do we need, but how can one ship do the job of many? He pulled up more battle records. The famous engagements that had made human naval doctrine legendary across the galaxy. The Battle of Proxima, Webb said, pointing to the first record. One human ship, the Defiance, against the entire Corvin blockade fleet. 40 enemy ships. The Defiance held them for 6 days, while civilian transports evacuated 3 million people. Tanaka knew the story. Everyone in the human fleet knew it. But seeing the actual numbers still made her shake her head. One ship against 40. It should have been suicide. How did they do it? Asked Ensign Park from the navigation station. He was new, fresh from the academy. They did not fight fair, Webb said with a small smile. The Corvins expected a normal battle. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon. But the Defiance used the gravity of 3 moons. Created false sensor readings, and made the enemy shoot at shadows while the real ship struck from unexpected angles. He changed to another battle, the Siege of New Geneva. The Syndicate brought 60 ships to break our defenses. The Retribution was the only Earth vessel in the system. 60 against 1, Park whispered. The Retribution won by not being where the enemy expected, Webb explained. It used micro-jumps through space, appearing behind enemy formations for just long enough to fire, then vanishing again. The Syndicate fleet spent most of the battle shooting at empty space, while one ship picked them apart piece by piece. The captain stood and walked to the main window. The stars looked peaceful, but Webb knew that in a few hours they would reach a battlefield bigger than anything in galactic history. Every victory teaches the same lesson, he said. When you send 100 ships, you plan for some to die. You accept losses. You think about acceptable casualties. But when you send one ship, that ship must find a way to win. It must be smarter, faster, and more creative than any fleet. Chief Engineer Rodriguez spoke from his station. Captain, the other species have good ships too. Good weapons. Why do they not fight like us? Webb considered the question. It was something he had thought about many times during his career. Because they never had to, he said finally. Most species reach the stars after making peace with their neighbors. They never fought desperate battles for survival. They never learned that sometimes the impossible is the only option. He turned back to his crew. 25 men and women from different parts of Earth. They had trained together, fought together, and trusted each other completely. Humans are different, Webb said. We came from a world where survival was never guaranteed, where being weak meant death, where every victory had to be earned through blood and cleverness. We learned to see problems differently. The display changed again, showing technical specifications for the Prometheus. The ship looked simple, but the numbers told a different story. Every system had been upgraded. Every weapon was the best Earth could build. Every piece of technology represented years of human innovation. The Prometheus is not just a ship, Webb explained. It is 50 years of human military experience built into one vessel. Every battle we have fought, every lesson we have learned, every innovation we have created, all of it is here. Tanaka looked at the specifications with new understanding. The ship carries our entire military history. Exactly, Webb said. When other species see one ship, they see weakness. When humans send one ship, we are sending everything we know about war concentrated into a single weapon. The communication system chimed. Lieutenant Hayes, the communications officer, turned to the captain. Sir, Admiral Zethka is requesting our position and estimated arrival time. The Galactic Fleet is already engaging the Devourers. Webb walked back to his chair. On the tactical display, he could see the massive battle beginning in the target system. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds, all fighting according to traditional tactics. Tell the Admiral we will arrive when we arrive, Webb said. And remind him that humans do not fight traditional battles. He looked at his crew one more time. Young faces, experienced faces, all showing the same expression. They were ready. The galaxy is about to learn something important, Webb said quietly. When humans send only one ship, it is not because we are weak or scared or stupid. It is because we have learned that one ship, properly used, can be worth $1,000. The stars outside began to change as they approached their destination. Soon they would drop out of hyperspace and into the largest battle in galactic history. Webb smiled. The Devourers thought they understood war. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The TFS Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system and immediately went silent. All non-essential systems shut down. The ship became as dark and quiet as a piece of space debris. Captain Webb studied the tactical display with calm eyes. The battle was already raging near the system's main star. It looked like a swarm of angry fireflies. Thousands of tiny lights flashing as weapons fired and ships exploded. Analysis, Webb ordered quietly. Chief Science Officer Dr. Elena Vasquez worked at her station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Numbers and graphs filled her screen as the ship's sensors gathered information about the enemy. The Devourer swarm consists of approximately 4,000 ships, she reported. They are arranged in a fractal defensive pattern with adaptive response protocols. The hive mind is learning from each engagement with our allies. Webb nodded. This was what he had expected. The Devourers were not just numerous, they were smart. Every time the Galactic Fleet tried a new tactic, the mechanical enemy adapted and countered it. On the display, he watched the Altarian formation crumble under precisely coordinated attacks. The beautiful blue ships that had looked so proud in the council chamber were being torn apart by enemies that seemed to know their every move before they made it. The Crystalline Collective's vessels lasted longer. Their famous shields were holding against the Devourer weapons, but even they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. For every enemy ship they destroyed, 3 more took its place. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka moved to stand beside her captain. Sir, Admiral Zethka is requesting our immediate assistance. His flagship is under heavy attack." Webb continued watching the battle. The Corvan general, who had been so angry about Earth's small contribution, was now fighting for his life. His massive battlecruiser was surrounded by a dozen Devourer vessels, each one firing continuously. "How long until the galactic fleet breaks?" Webb asked. Dr. Vasquez ran quick calculations. "At current loss rates, complete fleet destruction in approximately 47 minutes. Webb smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Perfect. They are doing exactly what we need them to do." Tanaka looked confused. "Sir, they are keeping the enemy busy," Webb explained. "The Devourers are so focused on destroying the obvious threat that they have not noticed us yet. And every ship they commit to that battle is one less ship watching for other attacks." He turned to his science officer. "Dr. Vasquez, how is our analysis of the hive mind?" The science officer's screen showed a complex web of connections between the Devourer ships. The collective operates on quantum entanglement across 17 primary nodes. Each node controls approximately 200 to 300 ships through nested hierarchies. Webb studied the pattern. It was elegant and efficient, like a giant brain made of metal and energy. But every brain had weaknesses. "Deployment pattern?" he asked. "Fractal matrix with real-time adaptation. The nodes communicate instantaneously across any distance. When one node learns something, all nodes learn it immediately. This was the Devourer's greatest strength. They shared knowledge perfectly. Making the same mistake twice was impossible for them. They learned from every battle, every tactic, every weapon used against them. But Webb had been studying hive minds for 20 years. He knew something about them that most people missed. "The beauty of a perfect system," he said quietly, "is that it can never prepare for an imperfect one." He moved to the captain's chair and activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. In 5 minutes, we will engage the enemy. What you are about to see will seem impossible. What you are about to see will seem impossible. Remember that impossible is just another word for something no one has tried before." The bridge crew straightened at their stations. They had trained for this moment, but training and reality were different things. "Helm, take us to the dark side of the 4th planet," Webb ordered. "Full stealth approach." Chief Vasquez began deployment of the Orpheus package. The bridge fell completely silent. Everyone knew about the Orpheus package, but only in theory. It was classified at the highest levels. Even most of the crew did not know exactly what it did. They only knew it was something that human scientists had been working on for decades. "Sir," Dr. Vasquez said carefully, "the package has never been tested against a hive mind this large. The quantum interactions could be unpredictable." Webb looked at the tactical display. The galactic fleet was dying. Ships exploded every few seconds, each one representing hundreds or thousands of lives lost. The Devourers were methodically destroying everything in their path. "Then today, we learned something new," he said. "The Prometheus moved silently through space, hidden behind the 4th planet's bulk. The ship's advanced stealth systems made it invisible to most sensors, but Webb knew the Devourers would detect them eventually. Hive minds were very good at finding threats. Orpheus package ready for deployment, Dr. Vasquez reported. Webb stood and walked to the main window. In the distance, he could see the glow of the battle. Thousands of ships fighting and dying while one small human vessel prepared to change everything. "The galaxy thinks this is about ships and weapons," he said to Tanaka. "But it has never been about ships. It has always been about the mind behind them." He turned to his crew. "Every species out there builds fleets because they think about war as a contest of strength. More guns, bigger ships, superior numbers. But humans learned something different during our wars on Earth. The ship reached its position behind the planet. All around them was empty space and silence. We learned that war is not about strength, Webb continued. War is about making your enemies see what you want them to see, and not see what you do not want them to see. War is about being where they do not expect you, doing what they cannot predict, and winning before they realize the battle has started. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments. Package deployment in 30 seconds. Webb returned to his chair. The Devourers have spent months studying galactic military tactics. They know how every species fights. They have adapted to counter every strategy, every weapon, every formation the galaxy can produce. He pressed the deployment button, but they have never fought humans before. The Orpheus package activated .space. Around the Prometheus began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot ground. Reality seemed to bend and twist as quantum fields interacted with the fabric of space-time itself. Then, suddenly, the Prometheus was no longer alone. 16 identical copies of the ship appeared in perfect formation around the original. Each one looked exactly the same. Each one showed the same energy readings, the same weapon signatures, the same everything. 17 ships where there had been one, Dr. Vasquez whispered. Webb smiled. The Devourers want to fight a fleet battle? Let's give them one. The 17 ships moved away from the planet, heading directly for the battle. But they did not move like a normal fleet. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, shifting formation without any apparent communication. Each ship responding to threats with perfect coordination. Sir, the communications officer reported, the Devourer hive mind is scanning us. They are trying to determine which ship is real. Let them scan, Webb said. What they will find is that all 17 ships are equally real and equally impossible. On the tactical display, he could see the enemy's confusion. The Devourer formation was shifting, trying to process this new threat. Ships were being pulled away from the main battle to deal with the human vessels. The beauty of the Orpheus package, Webb explained to his crew, is that it does not create illusions. It creates possibilities. Each of those ships exists until the moment someone proves it does not. Tanaka stared at the display. How is that possible? Quantum mechanics, Dr. Vasquez said. At the deepest level, reality is not fixed. Things exist in multiple states until they are observed directly. The package exploits this to create ships that are real until proven otherwise. Webb nodded. The Devourer's hive mind is trying to observe all 17 ships simultaneously to determine which is real. But the more they observe, the more real all the ships become. They are trapped in their own need for perfect information. The 17 ships reached the edge of the battle zone. The Devourer response was immediate and massive. Hundreds of enemy vessels turned to face this new threat, their weapons charging and ready. Webb leaned forward in his chair. The real battle was about to begin. Target the primary nodes, he ordered. Let's show them why humans only need one ship. The 17 ships of the TFS Prometheus moved into battle formation, and space itself seemed to hold its breath. Captain Webb watched the tactical display as hundreds of Devourer vessels turned to face them. The mechanical enemies had pulled nearly half their fleet away from the main battle, leaving the surviving galactic ships confused but grateful for the unexpected relief. HiveMind is attempting full-spectrum analysis, Dr. Vasquez reported. They are scanning all 17 ships simultaneously with everything they have. Let them, Webb said calmly. The more they scan, the deeper they fall into our trap. The Devourers opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward the human formation. But something impossible happened. The 17 ships moved like they were parts of a single organism, each one dodging and weaving through the attacks with perfect coordination. But this was not the mechanical precision of the hive mind. This was something else entirely. The ships moved like dancers, like musicians playing jazz. Each one responding to the rhythm of battle in ways that seemed random, but were actually deeply creative. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka watched in amazement as one ship spiraled through a cloud of missiles. Another phase shifted through an energy beam, and a third somehow appeared behind its attackers without seeming to move at all. How are they all moving like that? She asked. Because they are all me, Webb said simply. Each quantum reflection carries my tactical knowledge, my experience, my instincts. But because they exist in quantum superposition, they can act on possibilities I have not even thought of yet. On the display, the Devour formation was becoming chaotic. The hive mind was designed for perfect efficiency, but it was trying to track and counter 17 equally valid targets that were acting with human unpredictability. Primary node identified, Dr. Vasquez announced. Central Command Ship is the large vessel at coordinate 7-7-Mark-4. Webb looked at the target. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Prometheus, covered in weapons and surrounded by a protective formation of smaller ships. All ships. Target the command node, he ordered. What happened next defied every rule of space combat that the galaxy knew. The 17 ships attacked from 17 different directions simultaneously, but they did not attack the same target the same way. One ship fired plasma cannons while another launched quantum torpedoes. A third ship used gravitational manipulation to bend space around its weapons. Each attack was different, each approach was unique, and all of them happened at exactly the same moment. The Devour hive mind tried to process 17 different battle scenarios at once. For a creature built on perfect efficiency and logical response, it was like trying to solve 17 different equations. While being punched in the face, the command node shields held for exactly 2.7 seconds. Then they failed catastrophically. The explosion when the primary node died was visible across the entire star system. But more importantly, the destruction cascaded through the hive network. Suddenly, 300 Devour ships lost their coordination. They began firing randomly, some even hitting their own allies as their shared consciousness fractured. Secondary nodes are attempting to compensate, Dr. Vasquez reported. But they are overloading, trying to handle the extra processing load. Webb smiled grimly. Target the secondary nodes. All ships break formation and engage independently. The 17 ships scattered like dandelion seeds in the wind. Each one found its own target, its own approach, its own way to contribute to the chaos that was spreading through the Devourer ranks. The enemy tried to adapt. The hive mind was incredibly intelligent and capable of learning from any attack. But the human ships were not following any pattern that could be learned. Each engagement was completely different from the last. One ship would attack head-on with overwhelming firepower. Another would use stealth to strike from behind. A third would create false sensor readings to confuse the enemy, while a fourth attacked from an impossible angle using spatial manipulation. They are fighting 17 different wars. Tanaka realized. Exactly, Webb said. Every enemy commander fears this moment. When you cannot predict what your opponent will do next. When every plan you make becomes useless the moment you make it. When winning feels impossible, no matter how many advantages you have. Another secondary node exploded under combined fire from 3 ships. That had somehow coordinated their attack without any visible communication. More Devourers began shooting at random targets. Their shared intelligence breaking down under the strain of processing too many different threats. The remaining galactic fleet, seeing their opportunity, pressed their own attack. But even they were confused by what they were seeing. Admiral Zethke's flagship sent a desperate communication. Human vessels, please identify your tactical doctrine. We cannot coordinate with your forces if we do not understand your strategy. Webb opened a channel to the Galactic Fleet. Admiral, there is no strategy. That is the strategy. He could almost hear the confusion in Zethka's voice. Explain, please. How do you coordinate 17 ships without a battle plan? We do not coordinate them, Webb said patiently. Each ship is acting on its own initiative, using the same core knowledge, but applying it differently based on local conditions. It is called improvisation. The third secondary node died in a brilliant flash. Now nearly 1,000 Devourer ships were operating without proper coordination. Some were still fighting effectively, but many were simply drifting, their crews or programs unable to function without guidance from the hive mind. Improvisation? Admiral Zethka sounded like he was learning a new language. But how do you maintain unit cohesion? How do you prevent friendly fire? How do you ensure tactical objectives are met? Webb watched as one of his quantum ships performed a maneuver that bent the laws of physics. It had somehow looped its weapon's fire through folded space to hit an enemy from 6 different directions at once. You trust your people, he said simply. You give them the tools they need and the knowledge they need, and then you trust them to find a way to win. The fourth secondary node exploded. The Devourer formation was now completely broken. Individual ships were still dangerous, but they were no longer fighting as a unified force. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments with excitement. Captain, the quantum reflections are holding stable. The package is performing beyond all theoretical expectations. Webb nodded, but his attention was focused on the tactical situation. The battle was turning in their favor, but it was not over yet. The Devourers still had thousands of ships, and wounded enemies could be the most dangerous ones. How many primary nodes remain? He asked. 13, Dr. Vasquez replied. But they are starting to isolate themselves from the network. The hive mind is sacrificing units to protect the command structure. This was the crucial moment. The enemy was adapting, trying to minimize the damage the human ships could cause. If the remaining nodes could stabilize, the Devourers could still win through sheer numbers. Webb made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other military commander in the galaxy. All ships, maximum aggression, he ordered. Ignore personal safety. Focus only on destroying the remaining nodes. Tanaka looked at him in shock. Sir, that will expose our ships to concentrated enemy fire. We could lose everything. Webb's expression was stone. Commander, this is why humans send only one ship. When you only have one chance to win, you commit everything to that chance. The 17 ships abandoned all defensive measures and threw themselves at the remaining Devourer nodes with reckless determination. They took enormous damage, but they kept fighting. Energy beams tore holes in their hulls, but they continued their attacks. Missiles shattered their armor, but they pressed forward. One by one, the quantum reflections began to flicker and fade as their impossibility was proven by direct enemy fire. 16 ships became 15, then 14, then 10. But each ship that died took a command node with it. As the battle reached its climax. Only 3 quantum reflections remained, along with the original Prometheus. They faced the last command node, a massive fortress ship protected by 100 smaller vessels. Webb looked at his battered bridge crew. Half the control stations were damaged or destroyed. Smoke filled the air, but his people were still fighting. This is it, he said quietly. Everything we have learned, everything we have built, everything we are. All of it comes down to this moment. The 4 remaining ships charged directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The Devourers threw everything they had at the approaching humans. 3 of the ships died in the opening seconds of the final assault. But the 4th, the original Prometheus, somehow made it through the defensive fire. Webb smiled as his ship's weapons locked onto the final command node. Target acquired. Fire everything. The last of the Devour Hive mind died in fire and light, and suddenly the galaxy was quiet again. The silence that followed the destruction of the final command node was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. For the first time in months, space was quiet. No more weapons fire. No more explosions. No more screaming. Captain Webb sat in his damaged captain's chair and watched the tactical display. Thousands of Devourer ships hung motionless in space, their dark hulls now completely lifeless. The hive mind that had controlled them was gone, and without it, they were just empty metal shells drifting in the void. The TFS Prometheus was barely holding together. Half her systems were offline. Her hull was covered in burns and holes. But she was alive, and her crew was alive. And that was what mattered. Damage report, Webb said quietly. Chief Engineer Rodriguez worked at his sparking console. Main power at 30%. Weapons offline. Life support is stable, but running on backup systems. We need immediate repairs if we want to make it home, sir. Webb nodded. They had won, but victory always came with a price. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka approached his chair. She had a cut on her forehead from when her station had exploded during the final assault, but she was smiling. Sir, she said, we are receiving communications from across the system. The surviving galactic fleet wants to know what just happened. On the main display, Webb could see the aftermath of the battle. Of the original 4,000 galactic ships, fewer than 800 remained. But they were alive, and their crews were safe. And the Devourer threat was ended forever. Open a channel to Admiral Zethka, Webb ordered. The screen flickered and showed the bridge of the Vrassian flagship. Admiral Zethka looked exhausted and confused, but also deeply grateful. His 4 eyes kept moving between his own tactical displays and the image of the damaged human ship. Captain Webb, the Admiral said, his voice full of wonder, my instruments tell me impossible things. They say your one ship destroyed 17 command nodes and ended a threat that our combined fleet could not stop. How is this possible? Webb looked around his bridge at his crew. They had fought beyond their limits and achieved something that would be remembered for centuries. They deserved to understand what they had accomplished. Admiral, Webb said, you asked the wrong question. Everyone asks how many ships we sent. But the real question is not about quantity. It is about purpose. He stood and moved to the main window. Outside, the wreckage of the greatest battle in galactic history drifted slowly past. In the distance, he could see the other surviving ships beginning to form up for the journey home. Every species in the galaxy builds fleets because you think of war as a numbers game, Webb continued. More ships, bigger guns, overwhelming force. But humans learned something different during our early space conflicts. Admiral Zethka leaned forward, listening carefully. Around him, other species were joining the communication channel. Representatives of the Altarians, the Crystalline Collective, the Luminari, and dozens of other worlds. All of them wanted to understand what they had just witnessed. We learned that sending 100 ships means you are planning for them to die, Webb said. When you build a fleet, you expect casualties. You plan for acceptable losses. You think about how many ships you can afford to lose. The human captain turned back to face the camera. His uniform was torn and dirty, but his eyes were clear and determined. When humans send only one ship, that ship must find a way to win. There are no acceptable losses when you only have one chance. There is no backup plan when you are the backup plan. You must be better than any fleet because you have no choice. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her science station. Captain, should I explain the technical aspects of the Orpheus package? Webb shook his head. The technology is not the important part, Doctor. Anyone with enough resources could build quantum mirrors. What matters is what you do with them. He looked directly at Admiral Zethka through the communication link. "Admiral, what did you think when you saw 17 human ships appear from nowhere?" Zethka considered the question. "I thought it was impossible. My tactical computers could not process it. How could one ship become 17? And what did the Devourers think?" Webb asked. They tried to fight all 17 ships at once. They split their attention, divided their forces, became confused and ineffective. Understanding began to dawn in the Admiral's large eyes. They saw 17 targets where there was only one real threat. Webb nodded. Exactly. The quantum mirrors were not really about creating more ships. They were about creating doubt and confusion in an enemy that depended on perfect information. The Devour Hive mind could handle any conventional threat, but it could not handle uncertainty. The Crystalline Collective's representative spoke up, her diamond-like body reflecting the bridge lights. "But how did you coordinate 17 ships without central command?" "Our computers recorded no tactical communications between your vessels." "Because there was no coordination," Webb said simply. "Each quantum reflection carried my tactical knowledge and experience, but they all applied that knowledge differently based on local conditions. It was not about following a plan. It was about adapting to whatever happened." The communication channels buzzed with confused voices as representatives tried to understand this concept. For most species, military doctrine was about careful planning, detailed coordination, and following established procedures. Tanaka stepped forward. "Sir, maybe you should explain it in terms they understand better." Webb thought for a moment, then smiled. "Admiral Zethka, how does your species hunt the sand swimmers on your homeworld?" The Vraxian looked surprised by the change of topic. We send hunting parties to surround the creatures and force them into nets. It requires careful coordination and precise timing. And it works because sand swimmers are predictable, Webb said. They follow patterns your people have studied for thousands of years. But what would you do if you encountered a creature that had no patterns? One that did something different every time you hunted it? Zethka's eyes widened as he began to understand. We would need hunters who could think independently, who could adapt to unexpected situations without waiting for orders. Exactly, Webb said. That is what the 17 ships were. Not a fleet following orders, but 17 independent hunters all working toward the same goal. The Corvan general, whose massive battlecruiser had barely survived the battle, spoke up. But this requires incredible trust. What if one of your ships had made a mistake? What if they had attacked each other by accident? Webb's expression grew serious. General, that is the difference between human military doctrine and everyone else's. We do not try to eliminate the possibility of mistakes. We train our people to be better than their mistakes. He gestured to his crew. Every person on this bridge has trained for years to make good decisions under impossible pressure. They know their jobs, they know their ship, and they know each other. When the battle started, I did not need to give them orders because they already knew what needed to be done. Lieutenant Hayes spoke up from his communication station. Sir, we are receiving a priority message from Earth. Admiral Chun wants a full report. Webb nodded. Tell the Admiral that the Prometheus completed its mission. One ship was sufficient. As the communication with the Galactic Fleet continued, Admiral Zethka asked a question that everyone was thinking. Captain Webb, will this change how humans approach warfare? Will Earth start building fleets like the rest of us? Webb considered the question carefully. Around him, the galaxy waited for his answer. The battle they had just fought would be studied and analyzed for generations. Military academies across known space would want to understand human tactics. Admiral, Webb said finally, there is something you must understand about human nature. We do not change our methods just because they work. We change them because we always believe we can do better. He looked out at the stars again, thinking about all the battles that would come in the future. There would always be new enemies, new threats, new challenges that required new solutions. The next time humanity goes to war, Webb said, we will probably still send one ship. But it will be a better ship, with a better crew, using better tactics than anyone expects. He smiled at the alien commanders watching him. Because that is what humans do. We take the impossible and make it look easy. We turn our limitations into advantages. And we never, ever fight the same battle twice. As the damaged Prometheus began its long journey home, Webb sat in his captain's chair and thought about the future. The galaxy had learned something important today about human warfare. They had learned that when humans said they would send one ship, it was not a sign of weakness or arrogance. It was a promise that one ship would be enough.